In the summer of 1934, Hitler had been chancellor about a year and a half, but there was still quite a bit of opposition to Hitler within the borders of Germany. Not everyone was enthralled with his methods of governing. There were some people who were thinking, well, maybe this isn't the guy for the job. The Night of the Long Knives was probably the most significant single episode in Hitler's rise to power.
June 30th, 1934. German freedoms and the rule of civilized law die in blood at the hands of Adolf Hitler. In the deadly hours to be known as the Night of the Long Knives, he murders his way to Germany's dictatorship. A string of pitiless and audacious assassins work for a bloody 48 hours to purge all who might contest him for absolute power or reveal a homosexual past. It is at this terrible moment that Adolf Hitler goes from just one more politician reaching for power in a chaotic political machine to a brutal dictator with the untrammeled power to murder millions.
In this two-day span, he eliminated all meaningful opposition within the German borders. It was a precursor, you might say, of what was to follow on a much larger and frightening scale. It was a prelude to the Holocaust.
Germans safe in their beds on the night of June 30th, 1934, are not aware that a great disaster is beginning in the streets outside. SS and Gestapo men speed to well-mapped destinations with lists of the doomed in their hands. They pound on doors and take away bewildered people who will not again be seen alive. In a tense headquarters in Munich, Adolf Hitler and a band of expert murderers huddle, nervously ticking off arrests as word comes back from a network of political policemen spread across Germany. From Berlin, Stettin, Breslau, Dresden, Glewitz, and other cities, the word comes back on the progress of the cruel purge. By 10 o'clock in the morning, the lists of the safely arrested are growing nicely, and Hitler authorizes the irrevocable step. He sends a prearranged code word, Kolibri, the German word for hummingbird, the order for a final massacre to begin. The tension grows unbearably for Hitler as he mans the telephones with his co-conspirators Rudolf Hess, Joseph Goebbels, and Martin Bormann. His long dream of consolidating absolute power pivots on the success of this night's plan in neutralizing anyone he perceives as a potential threat.
He was really on the knife's edge at all times. The army might have chosen to assassinate him, the communists might have chosen to assassinate him, people within his own party might have chosen to assassinate him, but he had some sort of a gambler's luck.
In another key headquarters in Berlin, the rest of Hitler's brutes are in action, with Hermann Goering, Heinrich Himmler, and Reinhard Heydrich in immediate command. Hitler can take pride in his brilliantly assembled death teams.
It took Hitler 13 years to work his way to the top. But along the way, he had help from a small group of men who all shared a common characteristic. They were absolutely pitiless. One of Hitler's early biographers, Conrad Hayden, he described this cabal as beasts of prey, and that would not be an inaccurate assessment. During the killing spree, Goring is sitting at his desk in his ministry, at a clearinghouse for all the murders, with his aides in there. and they're drinking beer and eating sandwiches and laughing, and there are shouts of raucous laughter coming from the room while these reports are coming in of people being killed.
As success grows more evident with each death, Hitler and his icy cohorts can take well-earned satisfaction at how close they are to gaining the fatal and absolute power they crave. Hitler's quest for power begins 2 years earlier. As the new Chancellor of Germany in 1932, Hitler is still very far from the consolidation of control that will put him in undisputed command of Germany. President von Hindenburg has reluctantly chosen him as the only man strong enough to produce a workable majority in the Reichstag.
He's the Chancellor. The President has the major power in Germany. The Chancellor is a political appointment that rotates based on whichever party seems to have the edge.
When Hitler took power, he won less than 50% of the popular vote. And he assembled a cabinet of unity, as it was called. It was a very fragile cabinet. Others in the cabinet seemed more powerful than this former gutter snipe. I would have liked to have been in some of those cabinet meetings, you know, I mean, watching von Papen and some of these old conservatives and leaders of the military like Bloomberg looking at Hitler and thinking, we have to pay allegiance to this man, you know, who was a message runner in World War I and was arrested in a 1924 push against the government and looked like an idiot in the process. They think they can control him.
The crowds cheer themselves hoarse. They do not see the disaster that is beginning for them. Neither do the men who have helped Hitler arrive at this high perch from which he will kill them. Before full power can come, Hitler must make sure that his own Nazi leadership doesn't fall into the suddenly ambitious hands of those who might take it for themselves. Hitler keeps an ever-growing enemies list of all who impede him or threaten to. There are recent additions acquired during his battle for the chancellorship. Gregor Strasser is a powerful opponent in the party and a socialist with views opposed to Hitler. Kurt von Schleicher is a general who tried to split the Nazi party by offering the chancellorship to Hitler rivals. But Hitler's main fears focus on a far more potent colleague. Ernst Röhm, standing with the Nazi leadership accepting the cheers of the German people after the 1932 election of Adolf Hitler, has expectations of a hugely expanded role in an aggressively reborn Germany. He has solidly earned those expectations and is a man to be feared.
If you see a still picture of Röhm, he looks like a brutal pig of a man with scarred face and so forth. He was a brave officer. He became a captain in the German army. He won the Iron Cross and was well liked by his troops. He is much admired by Hitler. He actually brought Hitler in under his wing in the Nazi Party and succored the Nazi Party by getting army funds for it. He would siphon off funds and arms from the army directly to the Nazi Party and kept it alive.
Along the way, he was probably more than any other person responsible for Hitler's rise to power.
Among all the people of Hitler's associates at the time, Himmler, Goering, Goebbels, Strasser, none of them really had a power base. They all sort of lived through him.
But Röhm is something different. He has the massive backing of the 3 million man SA. As Hitler surveys the huge, brawling, personal paramilitary that has brought him to power, it and its unruly leader began to emerge in his mind as enemies that must be annihilated. The vast SA, Sturmabteilung battalions, and its volatile leader, Ernst Röhm, are not happy being subservient to Adolf Hitler. Although he is now Chancellor of Germany, Hitler sees his rise to absolute power threatened by the very SA that had been created to protect his rise.
He had the practice of having strong-armed soldiers come in and just beat the hell out of anybody that heckled him. And this seemed like such a good idea that they realized that they really needed an association, a sort of a storm battalion to serve as a functionary to clear halls, and not only to protect Hitler from speeches, but to go in and interfere with the speeches of competing politicians. So this is almost perfect, because here you have these German soldiers. They don't have a job. They're home from the war. They go to a place where there's a lot of beer, and at the end of the evening, they could beat the hell out of somebody. I mean, it really appealed.
Hermann Göring's charge to the SA on its police powers leaves the brutish ex-soldiers in no doubt about their lethal authority. He says, "Those who do their duty in the service of the state, obey my orders, and ruthlessly use their guns when attacked can rely on my protection. A bullet fired by a policeman is a bullet that belongs to me. If that is murder, then I am the murderer." The SA multiplies Hitler's power in the guise of restoring order.
He uses the SA, itself a disorderly organization, to crush the communists and labor unions who were demonstrating in the streets for workers' rights and striking fear in people's hearts.
After an SA brute named Edmund Heines had engineered a savage and open killing of a political opponent, his trial typified the emerging reign of sanctioned murder.
Huge crowds gathered to support the defendants at the trial. In Heines's case, he received a 15-year term, which was quickly commuted to 5 years, and he ended up serving only 18 months. When he ran for the Reichstag and was elected in 1930, he ran openly as a man who had committed a political killing, and this was seen as something positive about him.
SA intimidation reaches to every level of German life, and nobody is exempt from its bullying.
The jostling on the streets of the diplomats, intimidating letters sent to foreign tourists and things, and now the international community starts to protest. And the word gets out that this just isn't another government of order in Germany. This is something brand new.
It's a very revolutionary group, and it really is more than Hitler wants.
Within the SA, a Röhm cult developed, like the Führer cult within the Nazi Party, where Röhm was seen as the true leader, and Röhm was seen as the man that best represented the interest of the SA. And Röhm himself was, he was in a treasonous mood, there's no question about it. He was disgruntled himself, and he never saw himself as a subordinate to Hitler.
He got drunk, as he so often did, and he said, "I'm not going to let that little corporal ruin things for the revolution. The revolution is here to stay, and if he won't take it, we'll take it without him." Well, he had a guy working for him named Victor Lutzi, and Lutzi was an informer. Lutzi went to Hess with the information. They gave the information to Hitler, and this was one more nail in Röhm's coffin.
He wanted to have the stormtroopers incorporated into the regular army. The SA was much larger than the regular army at that time. The stormtroops had over 3 million men, where the regular army had just a little over 100,000, according to the Treaty of Versailles. And this, of course, angered the Army High Command, who wanted nothing to do with the stormtroop leaders, knew that they would be replaced by them.
The Army saw the SA as basically an untrained or undisciplined mob without any of the proper understanding of German history and culture and true duty to the state.
The Army was about 1/40th the size of the SA. But they have enormous emotional and cultural power in the country.
Hitler finds himself having to choose between an increasingly uncontrollable Röhm and the army. With Röhm's threat to his leadership, and the venerated army retaining the support of numberless veterans who fought for it in the Great War, Hitler's choice is quick and cold.
He has the opportunity to consolidate power the way he wants. And he needs the army and the established forces within society to help him. He can't afford to have the SA's turmoil and indiscipline threaten either the army or the German economy. And so in order to seize this opportunity, he realizes he has to sacrifice the SA.
It's a dangerous thing to try to behead a rebellious 3 million-man army. But Hitler, always seeing far ahead, has long ago assembled the means to neutralize Röhm and his stormtroopers. In 1923, he had formed the Schutzstaffel, or SS, as a personal bodyguard force. SS number 168 was an unlikely-to-rise nobody named Heinrich Himmler, who had been hired by the Strasser brothers in 1924 as a secretary and district organizer.
He flopped at everything he tried in civilian life. He even tried to run a chicken farm, and he couldn't do that.
But Hitler had seen something special in Himmler and made him Reichsführer of the SS in 1929 when he was just 28. At that time, the SS force had been a tiny 280 men and subordinate to Röhm's SA. Himmler had begun a dramatic expansion of SS numbers and roles, beginning with recruiting a sensational new talent of his own.
Reinhard Heydrich was an ex-naval officer. He was cashiered out of the Navy. He originally tried to get into the SA, and he submitted an application, and Ernst Röhm made the big mistake of sending his application over to Himmler, who was in charge of the SS. Himmler interviewed Heydrich at his chicken farm. He had absolutely no concept of right or wrong or human life.
He is exactly the character Himmler is looking for in the SS, a stone-cold killer. By 1932, he has risen meteorically to full SS colonel. In Himmler and Heydrich, Hitler has his executioners in place for his epic purge. But he needs total control of the government before he can turn them loose. With his caste and decision in place, Hitler begins to assemble the plans and means for a betrayal and annihilation of friends and enemies alike. The scale and audacity of the butchery will be prelude to the destruction of Europe. On the evening of February 27, 1933, an arsonist's fire destroys the Reichstag. Hitler finds the one missing piece he needs to set the stage for his epic massacre. Whether the perpetrator was the Dutch communist arrested and beheaded for the crime, or a team of Hermann Göring's torchmen, has never been known.
The very next day after the fire, Hitler calls on President von Hindenburg with a very carefully worded decree, which he said was necessary to thwart a communist takeover. He stampeded the president into signing this decree, which suspended civil liberties for everybody in Germany.
Over 3,000 persons are arrested after the Reichstag fire, including not only communists, but opposing social democrats and pacifists. On March 22, 1933, a concentration camp opens at Dachau. What will later become a cog in an extermination machine for Jews is soon filled with dissenters of all stripes. Any charge of suspicion of activities inimical to the state can send anyone there without trial. A murder machine is building, and soon, not even Hitler's close colleagues will escape its attention. After less than 2 months in office, Hitler has destroyed parliamentary government. There is never another free election in Germany during his lifetime. But the SA, the heart of his rise, is growing more and more hungry for its own power. The night of the long knives is coming rapidly closer.
Disgruntled SA members are in the streets screaming abuse against Hitler. See, they figured that when the Nazis took power, they would reap the spoils, political office, sinecures, and things like that.
Hitler makes Röhm a member of his cabinet and sends him a mollifying letter writing, "To assure you how very grateful I am to fate, that I am able to call such men as you my friends and fellow combatants. In true friendship and grateful regards, your Adolf Hitler." Furious at what he sees as a rebuff to fully shared power, Röhm scorns Hitler's overtures. Hitler sees a fast-rising danger and, with his customary decisiveness, moves to end it violently. He convenes a secret meeting with the army aboard the cruiser Deutschland on April 11, 1934, to smooth out his master plan.
President Hindenburg is dying. Hitler is the chancellor, which is the #2 guy in the government, but the real power is with Hindenburg. He wants to combine those two offices to be in charge of both. He also wants to be in charge of the armed forces. But he can't do that without the support of the army. And he will strike a deal with the army in order to get their support.
He would take care of Röhm and the SA, which is, this is what the Night of the Long Knives was all about.
There has been strong speculation that the army also threatens Hitler with revealing what it knows about rampant homosexuality in the highest ranks of the Nazi Party, with Röhm leading the debauchery. The arrogant power of the SA lets them live out a lifestyle largely hidden from the German people. In the SA community, a Greek ideal of masculine homosexual supremacy and militarism is richly realized. It's observed that they live in a male world without women, a world of camps and marching, rallies and sports, and the Munich SA become notorious on account of them. Röhm's amorous forays to gay bars and gay Turkish baths are riotous. He flaunts his homosexuality in public and insists that his comrades do the same. Himmler storms. Does it not constitute a danger to the Nazi movement if it can be said that Nazi leaders are chosen for sexual reasons? None of this is overlooked by Hitler, but he will hold his denunciations and reign of terror against homosexuality, perhaps wary of his own links to it, until the fast-approaching right time.
From them, and the
disturbing challenges to Hitler's advance to power appear and goad him to action. Vice-Chancellor Franz von Papen goes over his head to make an astonishingly brazen speech that threatens to destroy progress to dictatorship.
He came out and said we should get back to the old ways, we should restore the freedom of speech, we've got to get away from these bloody means.
The world by conquering ourselves with the help of God in a spirit of solidarity for the sake of the common weal.
And it was an astounding speech written by, not by him, but by a man on his staff. And of course, when Hitler's heard about it, he was furious. Goebbels seized the newspapers and wouldn't let them be distributed, but the speech got out.
Von Papen was a personal friend and neighbor of the president, so Hitler was concerned that if it ever got to the point where the president would declare martial law, he'd lose everything he'd ever worked for.
There was even more trouble taking shape to speed events.
Hitler decided, after hearing the German ambassador in Paris, that Ernst Röhm had been contacting the French behind Hitler's back to ask if they would object to a regime change in Germany. And when he heard that, then he knew that he had to take drastic action.
So his solution was quite simple. He would invent a plot to overthrow the government, and then kill everybody who was supposedly involved.
The SA had outlived its usefulness. Okay, it had cleared the streets, in a sense, generated the chaos that Hitler needed to present himself as a restorer of order, but then Hitler was forced to control that chaos, to restore that order, and the way to do that, the instrument was a coup against his own people.
Working out of Gestapo headquarters through early June of 1934, Reinhard Heydrich meticulously charts Hitler's dazzling purge operation and assigns it the disarming code name Hummingbird. Sealed envelopes containing instructions are distributed to Gestapo units throughout Germany. Hitler makes himself part of an elaborate strategy to allay suspicion. On June 28th, he attends a wedding of a local Gauleiter and later ostentatiously visits the wealthy and famous Krupp family.
There has already been an arrangement made that Röhm was going to go on leave because he was not well, and that the entire SA was going to take the month of July off.
There was never any evidence that a plot existed. Ernst Röhm, who was the head of the Brown Shirts, was on vacation. He was down on holiday at the Hotel Hanselbar at Bad Wiessee.
So Hitler sent to Röhm and said, I want to see the SA people on June 30th at 11 a.m. There'd been an incident in which some SA people had roughed up some foreigners, some foreign diplomats, and he wanted to ostensibly lecture them about you can't do this to foreign diplomats.
The SA commander dispatches telegrams to his top officers to rush to Bad Wiessee. He schedules a banquet with a specially ordered vegetarian menu for Hitler. Röhm has not realized that it is he and his men who are going to be fed to their visitor. The execution of the Night of the Long Knives proceeds brilliantly, with crispness and utter surprise.
This plan for arresting Ernst Röhm and his SA High Command was not thought out for months and weeks in advance, but actually was arranged in a matter of days and hours, and was pulled off with just a handful of police.
June 30th, 1934, 4 a.m. A Junkers 52 tri-motor touches down at Oberwiesenfels Aerodrome outside Munich.
When they arrived in Munich, they were completely unexpected, and the airport manager had been told by Ernst Röhm to report to him personally whenever Hitler arrived, day or night. But no one realized he had arrived until he actually saw them getting off the airplane, and so Röhm was not notified.
2 cars speed Adolf Hitler and a handful of troops to the Hanselbauer Hotel in Wiessee to begin the Night of the Long Knives. Hitler, a loaded pistol in his pocket, will trust this critical part of the plan to no one but himself.
They arrived at 6 a.m. just as the stormtroop guards were changing, and most of them were asleep in the basement, and the guards at the door had gone downstairs to waken the new shift, the day shift. And so Hitler was able to enter the hotel, and then his escort arrested and locked up the guards. I got the hotel manager out of bed and looked on the guest register to find out what room that Ernst Röhm and his companions were in, and immediately went up to the 2nd floor, pounded on the door.
They were apparently having a party that night, the SS members, and many of them were, avowedly homosexuals. There was a lot of debauchery going on.
Hitler goes in, says, you're under arrest. Goes to the next room and finds Röhm's deputy Hein is in there in bed with his chauffeur, and is disgusted by that and orders them arrested.
Unspoken is the fact that Hitler has known from the earliest days of the widespread homosexuality at the top of the SA. when a contingent of Röhm's SA men arrive unexpectedly in enough force to destroy the entire plot, Hitler brazens his way through.
Here comes some SA troops, two big loads of them in personnel carriers, armed. And Hitler walks out and says, turn around, go back, you'll be disarmed on the way back to Munich and placed under arrest. And these guys accept it.
At the Munich rail station, the SA leaders responding to summoning telegrams from Röhm are arrested by SS troops as they arrive and whisked to join him in Stadelheim prison with those taken at Bad Wiese.
And once Röhm was out of the way, that's when Goebbels picked up the phone in Munich and calls Göring in Berlin and utters the code word Kolibri.
With that, the signal for an arbitrary mass butchery of unconvicted German citizens has been given. The death list covers an enormous range. Killed are the Munich and Berlin SA leaders, August Schneidhuber and Karl Ernst. The army loses General Ferdinand von Bredow and the priesthood Father Bernhard Stempfel. Dissident writer Walter Schott and journalist Edgar Jung are murdered. Dr. Erich Klausner pays the price for writing the von Papen speech. And Gustav von Klar dies because he had once given evidence against Hitler in the Putsch trial. Dr. Wilhelm Schmidt dies in error, and the Nazis apologize. In Berlin, Heydrich is in his element in the night of the long knives. He relays orders to teams of killers poised throughout the Reich, using the telephone and the Gestapo teleprinters network.
This is an operation where the SS really establishes itself as the prime tool for Hitler in the future. They're going to be the loyal political tool that he's been looking for, that the SA did not provide for him, the SS will.
One of the principal executioners used by the Nazi leadership in the Night of the Long Knives was Josef Sepp Dietrich, who was an SS commandant, who was the head of Adolf Hitler's bodyguard. Sepp Dietrich led the execution squad at Stadelheim prison that shot to death 6 of the top SA leaders during this purge of June 34. Dietrich had them executed by a squad, announcing to them in their cells, one by one, that they have been sentenced to death, and then exclaiming Heil Hitler, and having them taken out and stood in front of a wall.
From cell number 474, Ernst Röhm can hear the harsh crash of gunfire as 6 SS riflemen perform their nasty work in the courtyard. Rotating teams of riflemen form firing squads, whose killing continues almost non-stop over 2 days. Oddly, Röhm, the main target of the Night of the Long Knives, will come closest to escaping its deadly reach. Arrest him, and all those pointed out are doomed. 150 SA leaders have their names called out 4 at a time. Those called are marched to a brick wall, their shirts torn off, and a charcoal circle drawn around their left nipple as a target. Those not yet called watch their own approaching fate through the window. The blood, flesh, and bones splattering the wall are never cleaned between shootings. Special enemies like Kurt von Schleicher and Gregor Strasser get special treatment.
In the case of Schleicher, the 2 men with long trench coats came and knocked on a door, and the servant admitted them, and they walked into the room where Schleicher was sitting, and they said, "Are you General Schleicher?" And he says, "I am." And they shot him, just pulled out their Walther pistols and put bullets into him. Strasser's murder was perhaps particularly horrible in the fact that he was in a cell, and they just leaned in and shot through the window of the thing, and he kept dodging around the cell until finally they killed him. But I mean, it was a protracted assassination.
The secret murders grow beyond counting. They may also be brutally covering up Hitler's twisted sexual history. Although evidence of sexual indiscretions by the Fuhrer is murderously suppressed, there are always whispers that he had been a male prostitute in Vienna and Munich as a youth, that he had been listed as such in Viennese police records, that his foppish mannerisms went suspiciously with his surrounding himself with practicing homosexual companions and co-workers. The homosexual Röhm had once made him a protege. Did Röhm have to die not only because he had too much power, but because he knew too much about a forbidden past? Hitler's history with women was equally troubled and shrouded.
Back in 1931, Hitler was having an affair with his young niece, Geli Raubel, and she ended up supposedly committing suicide. Her death was under very peculiar circumstances. She was found laying on the floor of her room, dead in the morning, and she had had a violent argument with Hitler the preceding day, and he claimed that when she died that he was out of town. But this was refuted by the proprietor of a tavern, who said that Hitler and this girl had been at his place of business that the preceding evening, and they had left after midnight. And during the Night of the Long Knives, this proprietor, Karl Zentner, was killed, also a wine steward and the head waiter, and these were witnesses that obviously that Hitler wanted out of the way.
On the Night of the Long Knives, many of the top SA leaders were killed, many of them arbitrarily. They were really loyal to Hitler. They were just killed because Himmler and Goering had fed Hitler with lots of false material. Heydrich in particular had fed Hitler with dossiers on people that were totally bogus.
The killing started on Saturday morning, June 30th, continued all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And Hitler flies back from Munich to Berlin. And then talk about incongruity. Here on Sunday, Hitler is hosting a tea party at the Chancellery, and he's bantering with his guests under this facade of civility, while at the same time out at Lichterfeld Barracks, they're still lining the victims up against the wall and executing them.
He struggled about killing Röhm. There's a lot of speculation about this. Some people speculate that perhaps he might have felt a line of loyalty to his former comrade that helped him start the movement, one of the original street fighters. A guy who stood in the docket with him in 1924 when he was on trial for high treason.
He took his name off the list to be killed until he was finally persuaded the following day by Himmler and Goering that you can't kill all his subordinates and let him live. He has to go.
His old comrade will die, but will be offered a small mercy for old time's sake.
He wants to give Röhm a chance to commit suicide, to take his own life as a former soldier. This is the honorable way to go. The guards down in Munich opened the cell and they put a revolver on the desk. It's understood what it's there for. And Röhm said, "You expect me, to take my own life? You don't have the guts to do it yourself?" Well, he's given 5 minutes, and not hearing a shot for 5 minutes, the two guards, one of whom was the future head of Dachau prison, go in, and Röhm stands up, bare-chested, sticks his chest out, fists like this, and they shoot him point blank. He hits the floor, they start pumping bullets into him, and his last words, recorded for posterity, were, "Heil Hitler, my Führer, my Führer."
And there's a saying in Germany, if only the Fuhrer would have known. And I'm sure that Röhm thought that this wasn't Hitler that had ordered this execution.
In this whole episode, we see a mass murderer at work. It had all the elements of first-degree homicide, premeditation, motive, intent.
All records connected to the mass murders are destroyed. Without hard documents, lists, photos, or survivors, the number of murdered is never accurately known. Many confidently suppose that the number might exceed 1,000. Propaganda Minister Goebbels denies the public any media coverage, even forbidding the printing of obituaries of the deceased. A brief release states simply that Röhm has been removed as head of the SA, with 5 of his top aides executed for what is called debauchery. The decapitated SA begins to fade as a force. The German people applaud the strong new hand that has stymied communism and restored order, forgetting who has destroyed that order in the first place.
Well, after the Night of Long Knives, Hitler was really in the perfect position. He had an agreement with the army that he was going to rearm them. He was financed by the big industrialists, Tyson and Krupp and others. And so he had the SA suppressed. He had the SS building. Elections would, from then on, be rigged.
The 13th of July, he portrays this as, I defended the state. These people were going to overthrow the state. They were going to just get rid of President Hindenburg, get rid of me, put these other people in charge.
He warns, everyone must know for all future time that if he raises his hand to strike the state, that certain death is his lot. This is one promise he will keep.
He gets a letter of gratitude from President Hindenburg that says how grateful he is to Hitler for taking this action.
Hindenburg, the president, conveniently dies just about a month after the Night of Long Knives. So Hitler then combines the offices of president and chancellor.
Leni Riefenstahl, the great director's monumental film, Triumph of the Will, that film is put together in September, 2 months after the Night of the Long Knives. And it's a great Nuremberg rally, hundreds of thousands of people. Hitler is seen in the film flying to the rally, descending slowly through the clouds like a god. And you just see the faces, and they're exalted. This is their leader. This is the man who rescued Germany.
All the members of the armed forces are forced to take an oath pledging allegiance not to Germany, but to Hitler. Now he was in a position to start expanding the borders of Germany, in violation of the Versailles Treaty, which was really thrown into the ash can as far as he was concerned.
The rest of the world overwhelmingly remains oblivious to the slaughter of the Night of the Long Knives. More ominously, those nations do not see that this cruel night hands a homicidal maniac total dominance over a mesmerized people and a devastating war machine. The world's forgetfulness helps the Nazis grow their death list to tens of millions as they overthrow every civilization they touch, bringing down all of Europe and finally themselves.